I'm here to interview my pop Craig Brown. So one of my first questions was, when were you born?
I was born on January 29th in the good year of 1947 in Philadelphia, PA, at the Mercy Hospital in Southwest Philadelphia. It doesn't exist anymore, but that's where I was born.
My second question, where did you go to school?
Oh, that's a long question. My stepfather, who basically raised me, was in the Army for about 25 years. So we traveled from, we were in Philadelphia for a while, and Camden, New Jersey, Fort Dix, New Jersey, Boston, Alabama in the late 50s, and then we went to Mainz, Germany, and then my last 2 years of high school was spent back in Huntsville, where I graduated from a high school called Council High School. At that time, up until my senior year, the schools in Alabama were segregated, and so. But I wanted to stay in my high school that was still segregated, got all black students. I felt more comfortable going there, especially for my senior year, and I think that I know that was the right decision.
Okay, my third question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about your childhood?
Oh, ha. Okay. Like I said, my stepdad was in the Army. Unfortunately, my biological father and mom divorced when I was very young. I don't think I was even 2 years old. And then, so my stepfather raised me along with my mom. And as I said before, we traveled. And I did like to travel. But sometimes, just when I was getting comfortable in one location, then we had to move. So that wasn't the most happy time when we had to move, because I had friends. And then I knew I had the next city. I had to get new friends. So it worked itself out. And so that was one aspect of my childhood, traveling with my stepdad different places. When we got to junior high school, on our way to Germany the first time, I did go to Sayre Junior High School, which was so funny because when I graduated from college at Cheney, that was my first teaching assignment at Sayre Junior High School, where I went for a couple of months. So in Germany, it was kind of tough. We were there from the last part of the 8th grade until my sophomore year, and they had some very tough teachers over there, and I was kind of happy to come back to the States. But it was a good experience traveling with my stepdad and my 2 brothers and one sister. As you know, my only sister passed away back in 2014. And it was tough on all of us when she passed. But as we grew up, I was the oldest in the family, so I got a chance to quote-unquote babysit all of them, change their diapers. I did play sports, baseball, football. After the 7th grade, I gave up basketball because everybody else shot up after 7th grade, and I got tired of getting hit in the head with everybody's elbows. So then I started playing football. So yeah, I think I had a well-rounded experience growing up, traveling with my stepdad and my two brothers and sisters, and we had a lot of fun. And yeah.
Okay. My fourth question. Who served in the military? Now I know that your stepdad.
Yeah.
But anyone else?
Yeah. My biological father, he served in the military as well. Now my stepdad, he served in the Korean War, and when he was in Korea, that was South Korea, he got what they call a field commission as an officer, and he got the second lieutenant, and he had a very interesting task. He was trained in how to dismantle landmines. Yeah, and then later on in his career, toward the end, he was into missiles, military defense missiles. Not the one that goes to the moon, went to the moon, but in time of war, you have missiles too. So I think I had some uncles. Yeah, I know I had some uncles that were in World War II as well. And I know one of my uncles on my mother's side. He was although he didn't fly an airplane, he was in the same unit as the Tuskegee Airmen. And another uncle on my mother's side, he was called a Buffalo Soldier. So yeah, so we had a number of people that were in the service.
And two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth one is, tell me an interesting story about our family.
Okay. The one that comes right to mind is that I got to witness the birth of your father and your two uncles, Chris and Chucky, or Craig Jr. I think that was probably the highlight of seeing a live birth of your own children. And I got a chance to see your father and, like I said before, your uncles, each one. In fact, your Craig Jr., Chucky, the doctor that delivered him, I was the first man to witness a birth that he delivered. I was the very first. And so I think that was very, very unique, very impactful to see your child being born. I think that was, yeah. Nowadays it's kind of matter of fact. A lot of guys do it. Some even videotape the birth. Your grandma wasn't ready for that one. So it's just in our memories. So I think that was a very interesting experience to see my children born.
Okay, and one more question.
Mm-hmm.
What was life like for members of your family during the years 1930 to 1945?
Okay, I can only tell you from what I've heard and told to me by my mom and stepfather, and later on into my preteen when I finally got to meet my real father, because he had left Philadelphia and he lived most of his adult life in California. So I know my mom was telling me about what she could remember when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and his stories about World War II, and also the Korean War. Okay, and also how tough it was for people of color, especially African Americans, to advance because of racial discrimination, bigotry, hatred against our people. So it's very difficult to get ahead in those years until the civil rights movement in the mid 60s and earlier. I remember my grandfather on my biological father's side having to walk many miles just to earn a quarter for one day. A quarter. And you have countless stories of unfortunately black folk called names just because of the skin color. So that kind of stuck in my mind, and that's why my grandfathers, and the folk that have now gone on and passed on encouraged us, like myself, in my age group, to really get a good education, so that when opportunity presented itself, we would be able to take advantage of the open doors that just began to open up during the civil rights movement. But they were very, very high on getting, saying that myself and others at my age would get a good education, go to college, even though many of them, the only time, I think, not the only time, if a black man, especially a black man, got an education up to, say, grade 7 or 8, they did good. Because many of them, especially in the South, they did not even get to that grade. Because they worked on farms, picked cotton, stuff like that. And so many of my forefathers never got an opportunity to go to college. That's why in today's society we must get a good education so that we can take advantage of those doors that they opened for us that were closed to them. And I don't take that lightly. I think that's something that I always remember. My grandmom Smith, on my biological father's mom, I looked at her hands sometimes. She worked as a domestic doing housework, and she would have these knuckles from all the hard work, domestic work that she would do for white families that would employ, and that's something a lot of black women when she was doing it were doing, is domestic work for the well-to-do white people.
Okay. Well, that is all of my questions.
Okay, do you have anything else you want to know? Okay. Well, let me say this, even though you finished. You and your brothers and your sister have a lot of opportunities before you, even though there's still segregation. You don't want to hate people, even though some white folk hate us. You don't want to, especially as a Christian, you don't want to return that hate. You want to still be loving and still be a strong, young black man, but you know your history. That's why this is good, not only from us, but you need to look out for your brothers, your sister, and since you're the oldest, and do the best you can to be a role model for them, because they're looking at you now, and they'll forever look at you as the oldest in the family, and that's was my role. That I counted the privilege to be the oldest in my family, my immediate family, because I knew that my brothers and my sister, I wanted to make sure they were safe. Everyone got a good. That was the other thing. Everybody got a good education. My sister went to college. My two brothers went to college. So many of us have 2 degrees. I have 3. So it's not a bragging, but it's the giftedness that God gives you. You got to take advantage of it. And as you go through life, you're gonna change your mind several times as to what you want to be. You got to have a plan A, plan B, even maybe a plan C, because some things we're not quite sure, but God will make it plain to you by your obedience to His Word. that as you get older, God will reveal to you, little by little, what you're supposed to do for now, maybe a few years from now, and you just keep. God has ordered steps for you, and it's up to you to be an obedient son, be a good Christian, and God will let you know ultimately what He wants for you in your life, and that's what you should be strive for, is to obey the Lord, pray, do your devotions, go to church, worship, be a model best you can each and every day, and God will reward you. Okay.
Thank you.
See you later.